Hey guys, welcome back to Rest Eat Move podcast. It's Matt solo in the studio. Hey, today I'm going to kind of take our last podcast, and if you haven't listened to that, Running from the Bear, I think it's a great podcast. It's deep, but it's so relevant right now. But I want to take a quick step or a section out of that podcast briefly. This is going to be a short podcast just to kind of go laser beam focus on the rest and digest portion. I travel a lot, I speak, I consult. I'm constantly being asked different questions. And one of the common questions, and I talked about this in the Running from the Bear podcast, is the increase in digestive issues, specifically being nauseous, low appetite, a little bit of uncomfortableness in the digestive tract, maybe feeling like you're going to throw up. And this is becoming more and more relevant and common in the questions that I get. And so today I'm going to focus on the rest and digest. I'm going to explain why maybe there's such an increase in people having this nauseous feeling or feeling of unwell, specifically when it comes to the digestive system. And it begins with the rest and digest. And just to give you a big picture, you have the autonomic nervous system with two branches. You have the sympathetic, which is fight or flight, the gas, or the parasympathetic, the other branch, which is rest and digest. That's the break. And I'm going to focus in on this break because I think it will explain a lot of the symptoms that we're feeling or experiencing in our society. IBS, Crohn's, autoimmune diseases, gluten intolerances, allergies, upset stomach, irregular bowel movements, constipation, bloating, inflammation of the gut lining, all these different things. And when we look at the science of rest and digest, it tells us that this other side of the equation is needed to digest food, which leads into the health of your digestive tract. And something that people don't really realize is when you're under stress, this chronic stress, this slow drip, it doesn't show symptoms overnight. It probably doesn't show symptoms over months. It may not even show symptoms over a year. But if you're chronically a worrier, chronic stress, you have just this constant drip, could be 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the road where you start to get some symptoms that are unexplainable. And so what triggers this podcast is that podcast we did last week. And all of these questions and comments and thoughts people are having around their digestion, yet most people are not aware of their stress and the relationship to the digestion. Most people are not aware that maybe some of their upset stomach issues or their inability to break food down could be related to that stress. But the science has always talked about this, the parasympathetic, the rest and digest. It's interesting to me as I look back and I think through this, playing college golf and sports and going through periods where there's times where you're nervous and trying to prepare for performance. And still to this day, I do get nervous to perform, but I look at it maybe a different way than I used to. But when you're going into this fight or flight response, your saliva production decreases. That's where people experience my mouth is dry. I'm having trouble talking because I don't have that saliva production. Or my stomach feels like I have the butterflies. That's that physical response we talk about when it comes to stress. But isn't it interesting if we can get into the parasympathetic state to rest and digest? Or I like to use the term to feed and breed. And I'll explain the breeding piece and why that's relevant in this parasympathetic. But when you're truly in a state of parasympathetic arousal, you're ready to eat. You're going to produce saliva. And so if you're in a really good space, when you go to eat, you're going to naturally start to produce this saliva. And when you get into the science of digestion, we find out 60% of carbohydrates are digested or beginning to be digested in the mouth via saliva. But what if you're walking and talking and running and gunning and eating on the go and high stress. You got a phone call and text messages and you're shoving things down your mouth, or maybe you're just, all you're doing is you're drinking your food. We've lost some of that digestion. 60% of our carbohydrates need to begin digestion in the mouth. I love smoothies. I drink a lot of different items. Sometimes if we bypass that too quickly, we lose some of that absorption, some of that digestion. So we create the saliva because we're starting the digestive process, but saliva production happens when you're in that parasympathetic state. And then you think about chronic stress. You know, zebras don't get ulcers. That was the kind of the theme of Running from the Bear. We're not designed to run 24/7. We're not designed. So when we're not eating or sitting down for lunch, when we're not taking breaks, we're not relaxing the mind and the body, we're going to start to create these chronic stress-related illnesses, ulcers, heart disease, acid reflux, irritable bowel syndrome, indigestion, diabetes, anxiety. These are all chronic stress-related illnesses. When you're running from the zebra, when you're running from the true threat, that acute stress, that amazing ability for the body to adapt, doesn't create the illness. What's creating the illness is the chronic stress. The disease of today is worry. And so let's come back to this feed and breed. The other slogan for Rest and Digest is feed and breed. And so when you think about your health, when you think about your digestion, when you think about some of these areas that we're seeing an uptick of issues, here's what happens. When you start to go into rest and digest, you slow your heart rate. Think about blood pressure. Think about heart rate. You enhance digestion. Maybe one of the critical things you can do for your digestion, not cutting out gluten, not avoiding dairy. Some of these things might be powerful. But before anything else, the body's much more sophisticated than that. We can handle a lot. But if our stress is out of whack, that might be our biggest opportunity because it enhances digestion, creates that saliva production, starts to calm the nervous system down. Maybe you're not going to as fast run the food right through the digestive tract. Maybe that's what's creating the diarrhea or the constipation, what's creating the bloating. It's going to promote relaxation and recovery. It's going to conserve energy. I think that's such a great thing. People are so exhausted. Well, they're never in this parasympathetic state. Remember, it's the gas and the brake. You can't just always have the gas down. You're going to run out of fuel. You're going to run out of energy. You're going to burn out. We got to hit the brakes. So I wanted to get on today, talk about this rest piece. You have friends, you have family members, you have kids, you have grandkids, neighbors. I constantly hear people say, Matt, I don't have a bowel movement more than once or twice a week. Or Matt, I'm going to the bathroom 5 times a day. Or I feel this indigestion or heartburn or upset stomach, or I feel like I'm going to throw up or pass out. We can go to all the specialists, the gastro doctors, we can go to the psychologists, and we can talk about all these things. What we have to realize is the body has this stress response. And it's amazing when it's handling it via acute. But when it's going chronic, 24/7, things are going to go haywire. You're going to start to see those chronic stress-related illnesses. I would argue most people that get IBS, Crohn's, maybe having acid reflux have never thought about their stress related to that. Now, sure, the food you eat matters, and there's probably a huge upgrade you can make in most cases. But if you compare apples to apples, somebody consuming this food and over here eating the same food, the person with less stress is going to rest and digest. And the person over here is going to have an inability to be at their optimal rest and digest. And when it comes to feed and breed, I'm not a specialist in this, but we have at the all-time lowest levels of people with the ability to get pregnant. Hormones are out of whack. medications, ADHD, Ozempic, weight loss, cholesterol. Our hormones are regulated in this parasympathetic state. This is when the body heals itself. And so I love this tagline, feed and breed. We need to give ourselves some more space. We need to give ourselves some of those boundaries to calm down, relax the mind, unplug. Because scientifically, that's how we rest and digest. That's how we feed and breed. And I'll leave you with this one piece of advice that I want you to take away this week, next week, the weekend, whenever you get a chance. I was playing with my daughter, Hadley, and we were in the driveway. And she likes to roll the ball back and forth between our legs. And I rolled the ball to her, and it went past her, went in the street, and she went and she got the ball. And so I was on the driveway, and I laid down, and I looked straight up at the clouds. And I could feel myself relaxing. You're looking at the clouds. You're hearing the wind blow. You're seeing the clouds pass. But you're giving yourself that space. I think many of us are running and gunning, going from one thing to the next. Maybe we believe that we're giving ourselves rest, and yet we're just scrolling our phone for 15 to 20 minutes. We're seeing a lot of issues here. People are worried, they're anxious, mental health's never been worse. But our digestion is to me, the foundation of peak health and well-being mentally and physically. Remember, our gut is connected to our brain. And if we don't start prioritizing the parasympathetic nervous system, if we don't create this rest and digest, you're going to see more and more people asking the question, why am I having these symptoms? Let's go bigger picture. Let's understand that the body is designed to handle stress. We need stress in a perfect world. What we don't need is chronic stress without a little bit of the break. Have a great week. We'll see you again next time.